another fight that just got announced recently. Your boy Kevin Lee has his next fight.
That fight is fucking. You know what? Like I said earlier, just because I don't like the guy doesn't mean I won't give him some credit where credit's due. Even though the guy fucking does nothing but talk shit, I love this fight. This fight is like, it's like Kevin is. It's like it's opposite where it's like, it's like with Reyes and Weidman. Reyes is the young undefeated guy, and Weidman's kind of like he's the older dude, has a couple bumps on his record, whatever. Where it's like the opposite with Lee and Gillespie, where Gillespie's older than me, I think, and he's the one that's the undefeated prospect, and Kevin's like 25, and he's out here to prove himself. You know what I mean? So it's a very interesting fight. That's a fucking great fight. That is good matchmaking, and I'll give Kevin credit where it's due. He asked for the toughest challenge he could get, going back down to 55, and that the weight cut alone is a challenge for him. And nobody wants to fight Gillespie, and he threw his name in the hat. So kudos to him. That's a fucking great fight.
Yeah, I like Kevin Lee. I like what he puts out there. I like that he has a personality. I think he's a very talented fighter. I don't think that's going to be a good night versus Gregor.
You don't think it's going to be a good fight for Gregor? Or for
No,
Kevin?
I don't think it's going to be a good night for Kevin Lee. Gregor's one of those guys, like, he trains year-round. He's a fucking savage. Like, the only way that Kevin Lee or anyone, I think, at 55 beats him is if you catch him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You got to put his lights out. And he's going to be hard to take down. Kevin's style is there's not a ton of setup to what he does. It's like, that straight direct double leg is coming. There's not a lot of finesse to it, and it works. You know what I mean? He took me down with this, so I can't really fucking hate on the guy too much. But yeah, that's just tough. Gillespie's speed and him not being a big weight cut guy. Kevin's got that big old noggin that's not hard to miss. You know what I mean? It's that's going to be a tricky fight.
Yeah. Oh, Gillespie's an animal. Me and Dennis especially, has trained a lot more with Gregor. I used to train with Gregor way back in the day. He's obsessed with competing. Like, obsessed with training, conditioning, the whole thing year-round.
Yeah, he posts his strength conditioning videos. He's on the lunatic fringe. He's a fucking psychopath, and I love it. You know what I mean? I love to see guys that wrestled at a high level come compete and make martial arts. They bring something different to the table. They bring a different intensity. They bring a different, we've seen the high level boxers and kickboxers, and we've seen those types of guys transition to mixed martial arts and compete. But nobody brings the intensity or the gamesmanship like a high level. You don't even have to be a Division I wrestler. Even a guy that spent time wrestling Division II, Division III, JUCO, NAI, it doesn't matter. If somebody has invested their life into wrestling and transition and mixed martial arts, they always bring a certain level of intensity and gamesmanship that I don't think any guy from any other combat sport brings. You know what I mean? Gillespie's a special guy, and we're gonna find out how special he is on November 2nd. I mean, this fight with Kevin Lee is a big one for him, and it's a big fight for both guys. That to me, like, they always say that there's like a people's main event for each fight. Like, that is the people outside of Nate and Jorge. That is the people's main event is Gillespie and Kevin Lee, and it's only been announced for a couple. That's a big one.
Yeah. If you didn't already say, how do you see that fight going?
Yeah, go with Gillespie, man. I think Kev's. I feel for the guy. He lost his head coach, Robert Follis, who's an amazing guy. I never trained with Robert, but him being based out of the Northwest, I've got to interact with Robert a lot, and I couldn't imagine losing my head coach in the thick of my career. So Kevin's, he's bouncing around looking for a lot of answers in a lot of different places, whether it be different weight class or different coaches. This is a tough fight. I commend Kevin for wanting to fight the stiffest competition possible always. That is commendable. But in the same sense, like, sometimes you need to there are no gimmies in the UFC, but sometimes you need to, like, reset and not go looking for all the answers in different places. Maybe you needed to, we know how good you are. Maybe to fight somebody at your level or maybe a little below. Like I said, I commend him for always chasing the toughest challenge possible. He is always looking for Khabib. He's looking for GSP. He's looking for this guy, that guy. You know, he's getting Gillespie. It's like he's never just giving him a chance. Like, you know what? Why don't I just let the UFC do their job? Who do you want me to fight? You know what I mean? Pick the fight.
He called out Gregor?
You know what I mean? Yeah, he asked for the fight. I mean, he's you know, like I like Kevin versus Makhachev. Makhachev is tough as shit. Everybody at 55 is tough as shit, but I like that fight more. You know what I mean? I mean, Makhachev's, you know, he lost a fight. You know, he hasn't looked. Makhachev's super tough, but his last couple fights haven't been the greatest. You know what I mean? But like, that's a perfect fight for Kevin. Where it's like you're gonna fight Gillespie, who has been nothing shy of fucking amazing in his UFC. He all but one fight he's finished. You know what I mean? So it's.
I'll tell you exactly why Gregor took the fight.
Why?
And hang on, he never told me why.
Well,
here's what I'm thinking. I know Gregor well enough. Al Iaquinta came into the Hofstra room, I don't know, 6 years ago. Gregor beat the fucking piss out of him. Till he could barely get off the ground. Because Gregor was flirting with the idea of fighting, so he's like, this guy's in my weight class. Gregor fucking piss pounded Al. Al never came back to the Hofstra wrestling room. So in Gregor's mind, he'll beat Al in a fight. Al beats Kevin Lee not once, but twice. So Gregor's like, oh, if Al could do it, I'll crush him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's something I was going to say. I've heard through the grapevine that both of these guys have been offered each other before. And Kevin Lee will say Gregor turned the fight down, and Gregor will say I fought someone else, you know, because Gregor gets offered a few names.
Yeah.
So
of course, that's standard procedure.
I've heard that, and then also, like you told the Al story, I know that story, and then I'm pretty sure Gregor beat Gaethje in college, right, in wrestling, so he has that mental edge he feels over Gaethje, and then even he's gone out to the BMF ranch and done endless rounds with Cerrone.
Yeah, but he'll never fight Cerrone, I don't think.
If the UFC makes him, like if all of a sudden the UFC says we have one fight offer for you, you know?
But I will say, I'll tell you this, and I know from stories I've heard about Gregor might have piss-pounded him in wrestling, but I guarantee you Cowboy Cerrone put a fucking leg upside that dude's head a couple times.
No. Gregor said whenever they did just stand-up, Cerrone would fuck him up. But if there's if it was MMA, Gregor would take him down 12 times in a round.
Yeah.
Or take him down, he would not get back up.
There's one thing that's not good about that, though, is I think that something a lot of fighters don't do, and I think that they should do more, is talk less about training. I think that when guys are like, oh, I trained with this guy and I fucking kicked his fucking ass. I'm like, well, you know, it's one thing if someone else is like, oh, I was in the training and watched these guys do this. That's one thing, but it's like it's another when you're like, oh yeah, I was training with the fucking Johnny Smith and I beat his ass. It's like, what? Well, you kind of sound like a tool when you say that. You know what I mean? When you're like, I hate when there's like the build, like going back to Colby when he's like, when I trained with Woodley, I did all these things to him. It's like, it's one thing if somebody was like, you know, let's say like Coach Mike Young or like, you know, we're like, oh man, I watched Colby and Woodley train and, you know, Colby kicked his butt a little bit. That's one thing. But when you're the guy that's like, I trained with him and I beat him up, it's like, well, that's training. And, you know, did you get paid? Was it on TV? You know, no.
Yes, but also sometimes the training room can have a little bit of implication what might happen in the fight.
Yes and no. I mean, there is the chance of that, but if that was the case, I should lose to a lot of people because, like, back home, at least for me, from my perspective, I get beat up by like everybody in my practice room. I get my ass kicked by just about anybody I've trained with in Spokane, but I perform really well when I compete. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's even a real thing with Gillespie. Like I've seen lesser people fuck Gregor up, and I've been like, really? That guy fucking tapped out Gregor? And it's like, yeah, training is training. But then you know those times when both guys are like dialed in, and it's almost like a fight in the sparring room.
Hang on, in Gregor's defense though, like when he was doing these things, like with Don Cerrone and Frank Yeager, he wasn't even in the UFC yet.
Yes.
No, I remember because I've followed Gregor for a long time. on social media. So, like, I remember seeing posts about him going out to BMF Ranch and training with Cowboy and all that stuff. So, you know.
Well, even an example I was going to use was Covington versus Robbie Lawler. They trained together enough in the gym that everyone, I would say most people at American Top Team, knew how that fight was going to go.
Yeah.
Like, we had Din Thomas on. He didn't want to flat out say, but he gave us the hint of, like, all right, so Colby's going to win this fight, you know? Like, and then anyone else I talked to said, yeah, Colby used to just maul him, smother the shit out of him. So then it turns
that's
into...
a different vibe, too, when it's different when they've trained together extensively. You know, it's a different thing if it's like, yeah, I trained this guy one time and I beat him up. It's like, well, were you in camp? Was he in camp? Were you out of camp? Was he out? Like, how... There's a lot of different ways that can be portrayed depending on what type of position or what type of situation either guy's in.
Oh, 100%.